Imagine standing at an airport with your boarding pass, your visa approved, and your bags ready. But suddenly, the officer says, "We don't recognize this passport." That's not a scene from a movie. It's reality for thousands of students.
Workers and business people from West Africa right now. Why? Because three nations, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, made one bold decision: to issue their own passport and declare their independence from outside control. And the reaction? A quiet but powerful blockade from Europe, hidden behind the excuse of technical issues. Today, I'll take you through the untold story of this so-called passport war, how a travel document became the front line of Africa's fight for dignity, and why powerful nations are so afraid of it. For nearly half a century, West African countries have used the ECOWAS passport, a regional identity document that allowed free movement between 15 nations. On paper, it symbolized brotherhood and cooperation. But here's the uncomfortable truth: that passport and the wider ECOWAS system relied heavily on European Union funding. And when someone else pays the bills, they get to call the shots. So, while West African citizens believed they held a passport of unity, in practice it came with strings attached. When terrorists attacked civilians in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, did ECOWAS step up? Hardly. When French companies extracted billions of dollars worth of gold and uranium while locals lived in poverty, did this brotherhood speak up? Silence. But when military leaders in those countries pushed back against exploitation, suddenly ECOWAS found its voice, this time to condemn, sanction, and punish. Doesn't it seem strange that silence greets suffering, but loud criticism follows independence? On January 19, 2025, everything changed. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, three landlocked nations often dismissed as powerless, announced their withdrawal from ECOWAS. And with that, they introduced something revolutionary: a single shared passport under the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES, one passport. Three countries. One powerful message: we don't need permission to be free. This wasn't just about travel. It was a declaration of unity. Leaders of these countries held up the document as a symbol, saying in effect, if no one else will stand with us, we'll stand with each other. But almost immediately, European embassies received secret instructions. Suddenly, these new passports were branded unverified. Students with visas couldn't return to their universities. Entrepreneurs watched deals collapse overnight. Travelers were turned away at boarding gates. Ask yourself, who gets to decide whether an African passport is valid, Africans themselves or Europe? European officials claim this is about security or authentication, but let's be honest, it's about punishment. For decades, France and other European powers benefited from Africa's wealth. It's estimated that France alone extracted over $500 billion each year from West Africa through resource deals and monetary policies. That flow of easy money has now been disrupted. Think of it this way: if someone had been quietly stealing from your bank account for years and you finally shut it down, would they thank you or retaliate? That's exactly what's happening. The sanctions, passport blockades, and trade restrictions aren't aimed at governments. They target ordinary people, students, workers, families. A cruel reminder that independence always comes with a price. When allies starve you for standing tall, are they really your allies? Take the example of Aminata, a young entrepreneur from Niger. She built a thriving textile business, connecting African fabrics with European markets. With valid visas and contracts, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, she was on her way to scaling globally. Then came the AES passport. Embassy after embassy told her, we don't recognize this. Shipments got blocked, meetings were cancelled, clients backed out. Within months, her company collapsed. This isn't an isolated story. Students stranded, families split apart, businesses destroyed. All because three countries dared to step outside the script written for them by former colonial powers. This isn't just about politics. It's about real people whose lives are being torn apart. Let's step back. This conflict isn't really about travel documents. It's about control. Whenever African nations take bold steps toward self-reliance, the response is almost always the same. Economic isolation, diplomatic pressure, and media narratives branding their leaders as dictators or destabilizers. We've seen this playbook before. From Ghana's independence in 1957 to today's Sahel alliance, every attempt at genuine African unity sparks fear. Not because Africa threatens anyone, but because independence threatens the system of exploitation. Leaders like Assimi Goïta in Mali and Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso rose to power not simply to grab control, but because the so-called democratic governments before them had become little more than local managers for foreign interests. When your gold powers European industries while your schools lack books, what do you call that? Democracy or economic colonialism? The message is clear. African sovereignty is allowed, but only if it doesn't upset foreign profits. But here's the twist. These nations aren't just accepting punishment quietly. Mali has started restricting European airlines. Burkina Faso now demands certain payments in local currency. European citizens applying for visas face new hurdles. The signal is simple. Respect must be mutual. And surprisingly, ordinary Africans are applauding these moves. For decades, leaders bowed to foreign powers while their citizens paid the price. Today, at least in these three countries, the tables are turning. This is why Europe's reaction is so sharp. Because if Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso succeed, even a little, it creates a dangerous example that Africans don't need permission to unite, trade, or govern themselves. Remember, ideas are more contagious than viruses. Freedom, once proven possible, spreads. So, what does all this mean for Africa and for the world? First, it shows that the struggle is not about borders, passports, or paperwork. It's about whether Africans get to define their own destiny. Second, it proves that independence isn't a one-time event, like raising a flag. It's a continuous battle against systems designed to keep Africa dependent. And third, it reminds the African diaspora, and anyone watching, that progress won't come from compromise with unfair systems. It will come from the courage to choose difficult freedom over comfortable servitude. When Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso held up that passport, they weren't just issuing a new document. They were sending a declaration. We belong to each other. We will rise or fall together. If three landlocked nations surrounded by hostility can choose dignity, what's stopping the rest of us? Here's the truth. France and Europe are not afraid of African weakness. They profit from it. What terrifies them is the possibility of an Africa that is independent, united, and unapologetically sovereign. This passport dispute is only the beginning. Every African nation that chooses its people over foreign interests will face the same playbook of punishment. The question is whether others will cave or stand together. And for those of us watching from the outside, we have a role too. Supporting African businesses, investing in African education, changing the narrative about what Africa can achieve. Because when people tell you African unity is impossible, you can point to Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso and say, watch them prove you wrong. The passport they rejected was never just a travel document. It was a statement of independence. That's why it was targeted. So I'll leave you with this question. When future generations look back, what side of history will you be on? The side that doubted, or the side that stood for freedom? I'm Emerald. This is the Strategic Lens. If you found this story eye-opening, drop your thoughts in the comments, share this video with a friend, and subscribe for more deep dives into global power struggles. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and never stop questioning.